AM 1480 WLEA.
This week's was started out with terrible rains. The region was hit. Fortunately, the Canisteo Valley area and the rest of this part of the listing area was not affected by those rains as badly as they were in, well, Avon, Cohocton, and other places. Three guests today here on Top Story. In segment one, Dr. Ismail Mehr talking about how his medical team in Mana wants to fly into Gaza City, but they've been unable to so far. In segment two, Hornell Deputy Mayor Alderman John Buckley talking about his new position and other local issues affecting the Hornell area. And in segment three, Ambassador Mohammed Sacirbey to talk about Russia and the Ukraine.
It's time for Top Story on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Here's Ryan O'Neill.
Talking now with Dr. Ismail Mehr, the anesthesiologist at Hornell St. James Hospital. Dr. Mehr, in addition to that work, you're the president Imana.
It stands for the Islamic Medical Association of North America, Muslim based healthcare professional organization here in North America, and I've been the president for the last year, and I have another year to go. Now, with this current
Israeli-Palestinian situation, you say you were unable to fly to get into Egypt because they don't allow the planes in at the moment?
I know back in 2009, I was actually here talking about my experience in Gaza during Operation Cast Lead. And so, again, our team of 7 American doctors, we were headed out this past Friday, the 25th. We actually purchased plane tickets. We had arrangements made with the International Red Cross to get us safely to Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. When I say safely, meaning that we're not targeted because right now it is an active war zone. But unfortunately, the politics of this region are just they're just horrific, and Egypt is not allowing teams in right now or humanitarian aid through the Rafah border crossing just due to the current sort of embargo situation in the active war. So we ended up canceling because we realized we weren't going to get in. So in the meantime, though, we've airlifted medications from Europe, life-saving medications and surgical supplies for 50,000 patients for 3 months. The World Health Organization puts these kits together, and each kit serves 10,000 patients. So we purchased 5 of them. They're currently at Cairo Airport. We're just sort of waiting clearance for them to be released. Unfortunately, when there's anything to do with Gaza and the Palestinians' plight, there's always a lot of red tape that needs to be taken care of, which we're working on endlessly from our end right now to get those things released.
When you are able to fly in, what will you do once you get to Gaza?
Well, I may personally not be going just due to my schedule, but our team, the other members, will be going at some point. The first thing is, as we did in 2009, is get to Shifa Hospital, which is the largest hospital in Gaza City. And if many of you remember, on Monday, it was actually bombed, which was really, really surprising to me because I've been to Gaza. I've spent time there. That is the safe haven. If there's one place that is like no touch, no one goes to, it's Shifa Hospital, and that was hit on Monday. It's like the equivalent of Strong Memorial. It is the largest medical center in that area for 1.8 million people.
Sure.
And well, our going back to your question, our team will go there and work. There'll be a lot of reconstructive plastic surgery stuff to do. Right now every day I'm talking to people inside Gaza, physicians and medics who work at Shifa Hospital, what their needs are. We've been in contact with our colleagues there, and the need is tremendous. Pediatric care, pediatric specialists, because so many children right now are the ones suffering. There's 1,300 dead, but we don't talk about the wounded, and these wounded are going to end up dead, and probably not be counted in the statistics as a war casualty because they'll die a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later when the infections and the problems set in.
What are you hearing from your people in Amana right now?
Well, no one from Imana is actually in Gaza. But we have, it's the physicians. We have contacts in the hospital. We've been there. So the director of the hospital, I've talked to him through text messaging whenever his cell phone is charged up enough for him to contact me as possible. And right now, they have no more beds. They have no more. They're down to about 20% of supplies. They don't have the ability to operate right now because diesel fuel is running out, so really from a humanitarian standpoint and healthcare perspective, they can't do anything more for these people. And again, going back to my comment earlier, we know about 1,300 people have lost their lives, but many more hundreds, if not thousands, are going to lose their lives in the next 30 days due to injuries from this current conflict that are going to go unaccounted for because they're not considered a active war death. It's like when you die of a pneumonia a month later after you had your surgery in the United States, it's sort of, there was a complication and you died from that, but not necessarily from the initial event. Food is scarce. Shelter. They're up. Well, some of the shelters have been hit, unfortunately. And there's really nowhere safe there. I literally spoke to one doctor, and he was like, his last comment to me after I got off the text message, Dr. Malik, who's a physician there, and he was like, I hopefully will talk tomorrow because I'm not sure if I'll be alive. And I'm going to bed after talking to him about this. I'm just thinking to myself, and he was really, it wasn't like it was just a comment. He was really, truly, he meant that we'll talk tomorrow, if I'm alive.
The more you find out about the Middle East, the more complicated you realize it is. And what are the groups that are being affected right now? Because any time I see or hear a report or read a report about the Middle East, there's a lot more groups, religions or ethnic groups than you realize. Who's being affected right now?
Well, right now in Gaza, it's the civilians. I think the UN, all the statistics have clearly shown it. Of the 1,300 dead, over 80% are civilians. It's not the militants that are being affected by all this, and it's really civilians that are losing their lives, that are losing health care, that are losing their homes, and at the end of the day, we need to make something better for these people.
Dr. Ismail Mehr, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Alderman John Buckley coming up next in segment 3, Ambassador Sacirbey. Now on Top Story, I'm Brian O'Neill on the line now with Hornell's new Deputy Mayor, John Buckley. John, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Brian.
John, tell us about the new position.
Well, I was appointed Deputy Mayor on May 19th, and, it's been pretty uneventful so far. I have had an increase of phone calls from people around the city, not exclusively from people in my ward anymore, but I welcome that. There's a lot of challenges going on in the city, and I'm grateful that Mayor Hogan has a confidence in me and my fellow councilmen as well. And it's a lot of responsibility when the mayor's out of town. If he's on vacation or if he's out of town on city business. I'm here to cover for him, whether it's meetings or if other things arise. So. It's some new challenges, new opportunities, but I'm always willing to do whatever I have to do to help out the city and help out the people of Hornell.
John, when Sean is not on vacation and you're not filling in for him, what does a deputy do at that point? What does the deputy mayor do at that point?
When the mayor's on vacation, Brian?
When the mayor's not on vacation, what are the duties of a deputy mayor when you're not filling in for Sean?
Oh, well, when I'm not filling in for Sean, I just have my typical alderman duties. It's kind of like being, the backup quarterback, so to speak. So you're not really needed until you're needed. So, so I haven't really had to do too much yet. Although the mayor is on vacation, he's been on vacation this past week, and there was an instance where I had to go down to City Hall and perform a function in his place. But so far it's been uneventful, but going into the fall, I'm actually going to start spending some time working in the different city departments. I'm going to spend a day working in codes, a day in the DPW, just the various departments, just to kind of experience firsthand what their day-to-day operations are. Previous deputy mayors, such as Heather Kuczynski, Dave Oakes, had the advantage of actually, being city employees. So, they were more familiar with the day-to-day operations of the various departments. Whereas, I'm an alderman, and I have another job. I'm not a city employee. I don't work down in there. I'm the first alderman to hold this position. So, I'm on my days off from my regular job. I'm actually going to spend time in the city and dedicate some time to work with department heads and shadow them to some extent and work along with them just to see what their day-to-day operations are, to see what challenges they face. It's always one thing to be on the outside of it and wonder why they do this or why they don't do that. But it's another thing to actually work in those departments and see it and experience it for yourself, and that'll help me, and that'll help the city. If when the time comes, that the mayor is on vacation and it's something arises that they need more than just a signature or or fill in for a meeting. You never know, but the point is, I want to be in the best position to contribute as I possibly can, and like I said years ago when I was elected alderman, I take this position seriously, whether it's being an alderman or a deputy mayor, and I just want to be the best I can be.
Now, John Buckley, do you have any town halls coming up?
We actually had a date nailed down, and there was just too much scheduling conflict to pull it off in August, so we're looking at September to try to do one. And I think I'm going to try to get another one going with just municipal officials. Maybe have codes come. Maybe have the mayor. So maybe the fire and police chief, just to talk about what's going on in Hornell. Maybe get the police chief in and talk about the drug problem and their struggles and their challenges to fight that. So there's a lot going on. I actually had this has been a rough year for the town halls, Brian. Since I was elected alderman. Back in 2009, I've done 4 a year. Well, this year, I had one right out of the gate with Assemblyman Bill Noje, and then I had another one planned with the school board candidates, the 2 school board candidates, and Doug Wyant. But again, we ran into a bunch of scheduling conflicts, and not everyone could make it on the same date, and we had to pull the plug a few weeks before we actually were going to have it. So, running into a lot of conflicts this year, but we're gonna kickstart the town halls and get them going again, and hopefully I'll have a couple before the holidays roll around.
Talking with Alderman John Buckley, down to just a couple of minutes now. John, any final thoughts before we go?
Well, I just hope everyone's enjoying their summer. If you haven't been down to the Broadway Mall on Thursday nights, I encourage everyone to come down. We've had Hornell Partners for Growth. We've had great success, great turnouts for the different bands, and they're doing a movie every Thursday night. So Thursday nights on the Broadway Mall. I went down last week, and what a great scene it was. There was just a lot of people that showed up for the music, and you could tell just by some of the stuff they had with them, they were planning on sticking around for the movie. A lot of vendors, a lot of food vendors. So there's definitely an energy in downtown Hornell. So a lot of great people. Shelley Stevens has created a nice Thursday night. We've had bands in the past. Now she's paired the bands with the movie After Dark. So going down, you see people of all ages, and it's great to see that downtown. It's great to see that energy and that excitement. So if you haven't been down there, go down, check it out. Guarantee you'll have a great time.
Alderman and Deputy Mayor John Buckley, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Always fun.
Ambassador Mohammed Sacirbey coming up next. Now back on Top Story, I'm Brian O'Neill. Privileged to have on the line with us now in segment 3, Ambassador Mohammed Sacirbey, the former ambassador for the UN for Bosnia and Herzegovina.
My pleasure.
Ambassador, your thoughts on the crash of the Malaysian flight MH17, the aftermath, and the blame game that's been going on?
It's clear that it was the Russian-backed separatists or more accurately, it may have even been Russia itself, because such a sophisticated weapon that brought out this jet at such a height may have controlled at least the radar from Russia proper. Certainly the weapon came from Russia proper, and it may have been an accident, but nonetheless, these types of terrorist accidents should be foreseen by Moscow, but it seems to be more committed now to the nationalist, pro-Russian nationalist cause rather than to the considerations of safety, including airline safety.
I suppose you could say there's more than one suspect.
It's ironic that someone who was a Russian mercenary, at that time a pro-Serbian mercenary by the name of Igor Staikov, was also present in Bosnia, and he took credit actually at first for downing the Malaysian plane. He thought he was shooting down a Ukrainian transport. Soon thereafter, he withdrew that credit, probably at the urging of Moscow, but the trail is very clear. Strykov is one of the commanders in these pro-Russian areas, and he seems to make his way from one war to another, one conflict to another. We might even call him a jihadi, except that in this case he's a pro-Russian Orthodox Christian jihadi, not a Muslim jihadi, and he's someone, I think, who finds his calling at killing others rather than anything else. He's probably not very good at much of anything else, including social media, since he was so quick to take credit for downing a civilian airliner when obviously the rest of the world would condemn it.
Ambassador, where are things going with Russia and the Ukraine?
Well, I think it's really important that we separate out Russia and most of the Russian people from its leadership. Now, unfortunately, maybe many of the citizens of Russia are drinking the nationalist Kool-Aid right now. But the people who are serving it up are Putin and the inner circle around him, and the simple reason allows them to maintain authority, perpetuate an absolutist regime, and steal money either directly from Russia or actually manipulate oil prices and steal the money from the rest of the world, including us. When we talk about Putin and the inner circle, 20 years ago I had dealings with most of that inner circle, including the current UN ambassador of Russia, Churkin, who was then responsible as the Russian mediator, so-called mediator for Bosnia and the former Yugoslavia, where he already displayed an ultra-nationalist lie. I don't think he's a true believer. He just saw that it was the way to the top and ultimately did lead him to ever higher positions. The current foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, was my colleague at the United Nations. And very similar to Churkin, he also played the nationalist line, and again, he's moved up very high. Some of the others who actually didn't play the nationalist line got sidelined along the way and nowhere to be seen right now. So all of those individuals within the Russian leadership who might be moving that country towards greater integration with the global economy, a more advanced economic and political system, more open society, more democratic society, they've all lost out simply because nationalism pays. And with Putin, a former KGB officer, I'm not sure he's someone who would appreciate democracy and probably is frightened of it. Certainly after 2 decades of kleptocracy, I think he's afraid of being even called to account.
Your thoughts on the changes in Russia since 1991?
We all wanted a more progressive Russia, and I think that's in many ways what policy was tailored upon. Even in the former Yugoslavia, much of what went on there, and one can say much was sacrificed in the hope that we were dealing with a more open, more democratic and progressive Russia. Clearly, it has not shown itself to be, and unfortunately, until very recently, we kept hoping instead of seeing what the reality was. Now, again, I want to distinguish between the leadership in Russia, and the population. But nonetheless, unfortunately, the Kool-Aid is being served, and a lot of people are drinking it for now, and something there has to change. It's also a dangerous time because putting squarely the blame on Putin and the inner circle around him, including the oligarchs who've been basically lining their pockets with money, they're now also in a very dangerous corner. And they have the ability to strike back. If they strike back, maybe with holding back oil to Europe, that's going to hurt, but it's also going to hurt them. But we also have to remember they still have some very sophisticated weapons, and we never know what happens with an animal that's cornered. And Putin certainly knows that once he's out of office, he's probably in jail.
Bringing us to our next question, you helped create the International Criminal Court of Justice. Can you tell us about that, and do you think Putin will end up there?
It's the International Criminal Court, and it's something that in the 1990s a lot of us had hoped would establish the rule of law as a foundation for international relations. It's actually lived up to many expectations, including developing much quicker than we thought in terms of member states. Most of the members are European, quite a few Latin American. Ironically, the countries that don't belong to the International Criminal Court, it's an unusual club. It's the U.S. and Israel, but it's also China and Russia, Iran, India and Pakistan. So it's countries, for one reason or another, may be uncomfortable. But I think Western democracies, including the United States, should have high expectations if, in fact, international relations are based upon the rule of law, especially when we're talking about Western democracies who are primarily in charge there. How would Putin end up there? Well, in part because, of course, what he's doing now is not in Russia, but he's doing it in Ukraine, which, if it becomes a full member of the International Criminal Court, then could pursue claims, criminal claims, for war crimes and other such actions against those who are directly responsible, like Strakov, the guy who shot down the Malaysian airliner, but also the command and control hierarchy, which goes all the way up to Putin. Now, will we see Putin there? Probably not. But two things can happen. One, this can, in fact, in some ways, have him think twice about what he's doing. And second of all, and maybe more likely, some would-be new leader of Russia would use this as a pretext to remove Putin and bring him to trial. Because the International Criminal Court is a court, it's a complementary court that says we don't have to act if the states involved themselves act to bring justice. So if a U.S. soldier, for example, is responsible for some crime in war, the court won't act if the U.S. brings that soldier to justice through its military justice system or otherwise. In this case, the Russians, some future would-be leader of Russia or leaders then could say we would bring Putin to justice for the alleged crimes committed in Ukraine.
Is it true, in your view, that Putin has been manipulating oil prices?
I think it's very possible, and I only have circumstantial evidence because, of course, trying to come up with a direct link is impossible. But the United States, when it imposed, Washington and Europe, when they imposed sanctions upon Russia, the first thing they did is go after a private company that was given almost exclusive rights by Moscow and Putin to manage Russia's oil exports. And this company had made huge amounts of money. So when I talk about Putin and his inner circle lining their pockets, I think this is how they did it. I'm not sure it was outright theft, as it was the manipulation of prices to a private trading company that basically controlled almost all of Russia's exports. And by the way, that's much more effective than OPEC because it's under one authority, and they don't have to worry about coming together on a single price, for example, like OPEC does, or dealing with the free market system like the rest of the world does. I find it incredible that since the Ukraine crisis and since the threat of Russian oil exports being curtailed, and then we have, of course, the events in Syria, Iraq, Gaza, all of this upheaval, Libya to add to it, and oil prices have actually gone down. And the reason is that I think that what we, that is Washington, probably tolerated, implicitly tolerated in the past as a manipulation of prices by this Rosneft subsidiary, no longer is tolerated because, in effect, we've cut them off from the money, the flow of money that allowed them to undertake these trades. And it's important to note that the guy who ran this, or the co-manager of this trading company, was, before he took that job, was one of the senior advisors, most loyal advisors to Putin, and was a minister in the Russian government. So he went from being part of the Russian governmental inner circle to running an oil trading company which had a monopoly on Russian oil exports.
And final question for Ambassador Mohammed Sacirbey. Your thoughts on where things are going to go with this Israeli-Palestinian situation?
We have to come up with a political settlement. The two-state solution is something that's sponsored by Washington. I think that has to move forward quickly. Someone who's been raised, and very much an American in my thinking, in a multi-ethnic America, and coming from a multi-ethnic, pluralistic Bosnia, I'm not in favor of states defined by religion or ethnicity. But it seems that's the only thing that we have left for the Palestinians and the Israelis. And anyone that says, well, we can't do that now, what's the alternative? We've had the alternative for decades now. What I think is a horrible situation on the level of the individuals involved, but one that frankly distracts from what I think are the two major threats that we're dealing with in the world right now. One is the rise of Putin imperialism, and the second one is a more subtle rise of Russia, China and Beijing, which is trying to assert itself as at least an equal to, if not a greater power to Washington, particularly in its own neighborhood, where it's making all sorts of territorial claims and unsettling both our allies and others in that region.
Honored to have on with us today Ambassador Mohammed Sacirbey. Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Our thanks today to our three guests, Dr. Ismail Mehr in Segment 1, Hornell Deputy Mayor John Buckley in Segment 2, Ambassador Mohammed Sacirbey in Segment 3. I'm Brian O'Neill. InfoTrack is next here on AM 14.